still listening. We really are. You know, Pete taps us on the shoulder at the end of all this. This doesn't sound right to me. That's fine. I've heard, I think, practically every argument. I don't know what else you want to hear. But people are simply astonishingly odd in the way they get to reason. So that's our opening point. What we then do sometimes is sing songs. We'll do that today. We haven't got a big enough choir. Is that it? What do you say? No, leave that alone. Sure. Sometimes we sing a song from the Church of God hymnal where the words have been, what's the word? Massaged, like that. The words have been massaged to get rid of the wrong doctrines. We won't do that today, but we will invite my good friend on the left here to speak anything he'd like to say, you know, for a limited, we'll give you 2 hours, no, 20 minutes, if you want to.
2 minutes.
Come up here with your wife, or whatever the style is. Everything is fine. Okay, so with that then in mind, we'll get to other things. Any letters you want to read?
Yes. So,
What do you got?
okay, this is from YouTube. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say thank you for all of your hard work. Having a passion for truth is a difficult task for many, especially when it leads to a recognized need for spiritual surgery. In the recent months, I have started to read the Bible in a new way, and I can't explain how grateful I am to persons like yourself for helping me to learn how to know the only true God and Jesus Christ whom he sent.
Yeah.
I look forward to watching more videos and reading more of your books.
Yeah.
And this
That's
is
kind
another one from a former JW.
Former JW, yes.
I was baptized at JW when there was a particular magazine cover on the Awake magazine, I think, on youths dying from no blood transfusions.
Yes.
That came out May 22nd, 1994.
Yes.
Back then, I was sold on the idea it was supposedly healthier, less risky, and integrity keeping regarding the no blood issue.
Mm-hmm.
Acts 15 was hammered into my head during my Bible study, 1992 to 1994, especially by means of a then new 32-page brochure entitled How Can Blood Save Your Life?
Mm-hmm.
It gave all kinds of cherry-picked references with supposed medical doctor backing as to why a JW should never take any kind of blood transfusion.
Yes. That's amazing.
2 recent cases that woke me up to look at this differently were the Canadian 27-year-old JW sister who was pregnant and in complications delivering her newborn needed blood, refused because of this to undue influence of indoctrination, and died at 27. A second case was that of another sister. She died at 32 when her mom refused her need for blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. But even closer to home, a couple from Nigeria in my Kingdom of God class, 4 weeks, spread out over a period. And this lady's telling me the story of a good JW friend of hers in Nigeria, tried to get pregnant for 10 years, eventually got pregnant. When it came to have the child, both the baby and the mother needed a blood transfusion. And she said, I'm going to do it. I'll have the blood transfusion. Husband said, honey, you're not doing it. Well, the woman is dead and the baby is dead. I mean, if that doesn't drive people on, I'm determined to try to change that. Moses actually wasn't talking about blood transfusions. I don't think he was. So how bad is religion? One of my sayings is then, atheism is better than religion done wrong. Atheists are rather reasonable. They're not going to say things like that. They're very kind to us on the whole. They don't believe in God. But I can handle that in a way. I cannot handle your Southern Baptist Bible thump. Bible, that's my Georgian. I shouldn't say that too often. But they're thumping the Bible, and they've been taught that any amount of alcohol is a sin that's going to put you into eternal torture, not just... Okay. And I said, come on, even an ignorant Brit who only goes to church to be hatched, matched and dispatched, that's 95% of them from where I came from, they know that Jesus turned water into alcohol. You can look it up in Merriam's dictionary. You can look up any Greek lexicon. The word enos in Greek means wine. It doesn't mean grape juice. End of argument, shut up, sit down. No. You're going to hell if you even touch that. So I've got a page I was going to give to you guys of some very nice comments that have been made over the years. And then a couple at the bottom which aren't so kind. Anthony, your narrow hips are going to go to hell forever and ever. Your narrow hips. But I've also got nice things said by my professor when I went back to school. And he said, I've been honored to work with people whose church, he thought it was my church, it wasn't my church at all, but what you're saying makes increasingly good sense.
Here's another.
Yes.
Another negative one.
Keep
Yes,
spreading.
To balance it.
To balance, please.
Keep spreading your hate. It's people like you that keep evil alive.
Yes.
Oh.
That's for you.
Ouch.
There is a devil who doesn't want you to be like. I mean, that's just silly. But anyway,
So
thank
I
you,
said,
Fred.
let's do like a banner. Keep evil alive.
Yes. What was the church sign we saw on Easter there? So-called Easter.
Yes. Experience the day God died.
Experience
On
the
Good
day
Friday.
God.
Good Friday.
And I feel that my American friends, come on, you guys are so bright. Look at you. Look at this amazing nation.
This was a billboard.
Yeah.
Billboards
Michigan.
cost a lot of money, and we should know because we've tried that. And
Yes.
This church in Michigan,
Yeah.
Yeah.
had a billboard.
Experience the day God died. Well, God is actually immortal, which means you cannot die. So you're supposed to believe that Jesus, in that system, had a beginningless beginning. You got that clear?
What
Yes.
would have happened if Jesus weren't resurrected?
Nothing. We're all
Would he
deceived.
still have been in heaven
I,
if he hadn't been resurrected?
I know. The whole thing's gone, isn't it? The faith is gone.
It proves that, hey, he couldn't be binary
No,
places at once, because when he was dead, or was he still in heaven at the time he was dead?
that's nonsense.
If he hadn't been resurrected, would he have,
Crazy.
what would have happened?
He was
The second God would have died, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, God cannot die, but Jesus did die, and Jesus is God. This is dementia. Am I right? This is absolute dementia. Our task is to try to rescue people from that, and we're winning some. So that's the story. A beginningless beginning. What about hot ice cubes? You got one? Hot ice cubes. Married bachelors. What's that? A bachelor. I got it. A married bachelor. What was the third one?
Square circles.
Square circles. Those are squircles. You're smiling, but we'll get in trouble if we say this out there.
You
So-
didn't say what hot ice cubes were.
Hot ice cube. Okay, well, I had some homeschool girls here, did some Greek downstairs with me. And so I said, what's a hot ice cube? And the lady said, young girl said, it's a puddle.
No,
Puddle.
it's frozen cayenne pepper.
Oh.
Write these gems down. We can. Okay.
Anthony, speaking of
Yes, please.
billboards on our trip up
Yes.
from Florida,
Mm.
we saw on the I-75 a big, we talk about billboards, and it said, "Why Jesus made you."
Isn't that awful? Why he made you?
I said, "Hon, I can't believe what I just saw."
Isn't that
Yeah.
It looked like a fresh, it wasn't faded, it was a fresh.
Yeah.
What
Wow.
organization was
It
sponsoring?
didn't even,
Didn't say.
say, there was no scripture, it just said, "Why," then there was a
Phone number.
website,
Mhm.
Yeah.
website,
Yeah, that's right.
I can't recall what
Yeah.
it was.
So
Why
did you get out of the
Jesus
car and
died.
hurl rocks at it? But no, nothing shocks me anymore. It's amazing what people will believe, especially ex-Armstrong people who stay with the idea that Herbert was an apostle. I just don't think so. But this idiot here, talking to myself, I believed in two gods in the God family. This was good training for me because I know what it's like to be under the grip of somebody you shouldn't be under the grip of. I know that. I was telling my friend Terry here that I never preached a sermon in those days. I did one sermonette in London one time. It nearly destroyed me. I couldn't handle it. I never taught Bible. They sent me to Israel to study Hebrew. I'm grateful for that. We were there 1970, the year we were married. We were in Israel. But I never preached. I was never an elder or pastor or anything in the Church of God of Armstrong. And when all the scandal came out, then we had to leave. Oddly enough, the same year, 1974. Then the Christadelphians came along. I don't know quite why, but their troubleshooter, Harry Tennant was his name. He's now dead. He came to our house in England, and he said, "Anthony, there are two things wrong. Got to get on with it, too." Is that what that means? Am I wasting my time? Anyway, they said, "Anthony, there are two things wrong with your system. First of all, you believe that Jesus pre-existed." And I said, "Of course I do. The rock that followed them was Christ. Come on." This idiot was completely wrong. This Christadelphian had that absolutely right. Then he said, "Of course, you're the devil. There is no devil." I said, "Teach me. We've been wrong on everything." For 2 years, two little girls at that time had to listen to visitors at the house. It was always, are they devil people or not devil people? They knew every human being according to that category. So I've tried that one. And always the word demon defeats them. What's a demon? They don't exist. That defeats them. So I'm on a campaign now to try to help some in the Church of God who don't believe there's a devil. I've just refined the argument enough, just this last week. Here's the argument, I'll share it with you. You say to them, what about the spirits in prison? That's in 1 Peter 3:18. Jesus, after he rose from the dead, went and preached to the spirits in prison. Who are those spirits? I've known these things vaguely, but it's only when you're confronted with a counter-argument that you can sometimes really get into the subject, and then you work it out. Okay, well, pneumata, we use the modern Greek pronunciation of we teach it, and they do at Harvard too. It's a living language. Pneumata, spirits, when used absolutely, without any qualification, not spirits of just men made perfect, not other forms of spirit, but that word, pneumata, spirits, always means demons or angels, never human beings. So Jesus went and preached to fallen angels there. End of argument. With that, I would hope to change the whole of the Christadelphian movement, but it's unlikely I will. Point being that if you interact, this must be true in business, I would think. If you interact with others, it sharpens the argument, doesn't it? That's what's happening. It's good training. Okay, so we're not going to sing today. We're going to do Matthew 24 because that's just a fun subject. You want to say something?
A Planned Parenthood update.
Please.
We all know that salesmen usually have to meet quotas, and recently it was revealed that Planned Parenthood enforces a monthly quota, and if they meet it, they have the gall to have a pizza party. If not, then some corrective action is taken. But my point is that Planned Parenthood trains its employees to pressure women to have an abortion.
Yeah.
If you go in there as an innocent for a pregnancy test, you can be manipulated, and the employees work on you to meet their quota. And then too, the pro-choice advocates only welcome choice if it's their choice, if it's the choice to abort. In fact, if they would hail the decision to abort as a wise one, but if the mother changes her mind at the last moment, then they say that she is immature, undiscerning, etc., etc. So choice at that point is thrown out the window. They only believe in choice if it's the choice to abort, which is to murder.
Horrible. Yeah. So we are, as you see, interactive in church. We've got people writing to us via the computer here. We sometimes have to keep them calm, you know, so they get very excited and want to argue with each other. But sometimes we get some very nice comments and interact. So this is interactive church, although I will deliver something on Matthew 24 coming up shortly. But I think, though, what we will do now then, you can remain seated if you want to. No laws, no rules. And we'll open with prayer, but then I will ask my friend on the left here to come and say whatever is on his heart, if you'd like to. We'll shut you up after 2.5 hours, but that may not be necessary. Okay, let's pray together. Our Father in heaven, you are the great God of the universe, and we marvel at your creation, especially the unborn life and the born lives as well. All of that living miracle that we see around us, personality, beautiful flowers here in Georgia at this time. We thank you for the extraordinary miracle we see daily as we look at the creation. We thank you for our gathering here where the Lord defends us with the right of free speech. We are very grateful for that. We thank you for all the Bibles and the work that's gone into expanding them. We ask you to be with all of those out there listening to us this morning. Bless them in their various ways this day and the weeks that lie down in front of them still, lie in the future for them. Bless them with everything they're doing. We do pray, may your kingdom come, may Christ rule on the earth and put an end to the madness and the folly of human beings now, killing each other in various ways. We ask you to be with us, to send your operational presence and power, and of you, Messiah, too, to help us to be intelligent with the words of Messiah, that we can be built up and strengthened. We're offering this prayer as we do week by week on Resurrection Sunday, in the name of Messiah. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so what we will do then is ask Terry, who's visiting, to give us a comment from your neck of the woods. What does the world look like from your angle, please?
Greetings. Been approximately 40 years since I've stood behind a pulpit. I used to be a minister in the Worldwide Church of God. That was back in the early 70s, 72 to about 74. I lasted 2-3 years and came out about the same time that Anthony. So Anthony and I go way, way back to the Worldwide Church of God. 74. If I look a little warm, excuse me, because anything above 32 degrees is warm for me. We came from my friends right here, Pete and Maria Balbo, came out of Florida, so they're used to it. But I came out of Minnesota on Friday, and we got 12, 16 inches of snow, and it's still in the 30s in the middle of April. So if I look a little warm, that's the reason. But Anthony and I do go back a long, long way to the Worldwide Church of God, and some of the trials and tribulations that we experienced together those years. And I came out of that organization about 1974, went into a couple other churches at that time in Oregon, and finally came back and took over my father's family business. And we're in our third generation, my son, fourth generation now in Litchfield, Minnesota, and doing quite well. And grateful to God for everything that he's blessed us with, generation to generation, going on 107 years now in our family company. So I'm very, very grateful. I was thinking about some of the things that Anthony and I discussed. He just is up in Tennessee, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. And discussing whether the devil exists, Satan, and so forth. But I think in terms of Satan deceiving the world, and if we don't grasp that Satan is a being that has control over the nations, then we really can't make sense of what's going on in this world.
Exactly right.
There are conspiracies, and how can those conspiracies go on decade after decade, generation after generation, without this brilliant being governing in the lives and the institutions of man? So we think in terms that the United States, the greatest country that God has ever allowed to exist on the face of the earth, is somehow exempt from that scripture, that Satan, the great deceiver, has deceived the nations. Everything I've been reading, which I read dozens and dozens of articles on geopolitics, on health, on economics, on religion, there is deception in every one of those institutions, and has been that way for millennia. But if we don't understand the concept of Satan and his activity in the course of human affairs, we just can't grasp it, because man can't do this just by himself. Remember, I go to work every morning and my brothers talk about these things. And we keep a couple of scriptures in mind. First one is, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. That is very difficult for us in this day and age to keep in our minds.
Yes.
That there are demons behind. But it doesn't make any sense if there's not a power beyond that to influence human beings. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. Anthony can break down the Greek on that, and it's pretty plain. So God, in his wisdom, and we don't understand everything, like Paul said, we see through a glass darkly. But God, you look at Job, okay? He came up before God. Satan came before God. You see, and God says, "See my servant Job, how righteous he is." Satan goes right after it. Yes, but doesn't he obey you because you blessed him, and put a hedge about him, and so forth? So God allows Satan to do certain things, and certain things he does not, depending on the time. I think we're in the end times. I don't know when that is. Is it the next 10 years, 100 years? We don't know. We have some indications, and there may be an article coming out in the Focus that I wrote concerning the Tower of Babel and certain things that are happening right now. But without Satan, and I think God has got this rope around Satan's neck or his waist, and he just lets a little bit out here. And he pulls him back, and then he lets it out again, and then he pulls it back. And when that time comes in Revelation, when he comes down to this earth,
Yeah.
he's cast out of heaven. There are a couple. There might be a duality there, Anthony. But when God really lets out the rope, look out, world. But there is no doubt that he has deceived the nations in every aspect of our institutions and our society. And if we don't grasp that, then it's difficult to understand the Bible and what God is doing.
Yes,
So
Absolutely.
yes.
that's what I have to say. Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah. Thank you.
And it's been a pleasure all these years being able to be a part of this organization and know everybody here, Sarah and Carlos and Barbara, and of course our good friends here. How long has it been since I shared
us the truth.
this?
You
Yeah,
got us to accept the truth.
right. Has it been 20 years?
Oh yeah,
20 years. So I told Pete,
Yeah.
this was about 20 years ago. I said, Pete,
Yeah.
because Pete and Maria were both kind of questioning things a little bit. I'm going to tell you about the sleep of the dead.
1 Corinthians 15.
15, read that. He accepted that. I said, that's an easy one.
Yes.
What I have to tell you later is going to be very difficult. There's one God. And Jesus is not God. Right? Yeah, no devil. So anyway, yeah, so it's been a long time, but they've hung in there, and we're blessed to at least have a couple in my hometown that believe this way. Because I've got brothers that came out of the Worldwide Church of God, and they're still with an organization that pretty much accepts everything that was taught under Armstrong.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And they're still out there preaching. And I've thought from time to time maybe I should say something to them, but I just know the time isn't right. And you kind of know when the time is there. And I don't want to say pearls before swine, but it almost gets to that point where you're talking to people that just shut it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that's fascinating. There's a well,
Did I take too much time?
No.
I've been accused of that.
excommunicating. No, not at all. We should have given you the whole hour and a half, if necessary. Hour. That's brilliant stuff. Just read from your paraphrase version there, Ephesians 6:12, please. Brilliant paraphrase, NLT, the New Living Translation. It's wrong in some places, but it's very fresh, easy English.
For we
6:12.
are not fighting against people made of flesh and blood, but against the evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against those mighty powers of darkness who rule this world, and against wicked spirits in the heavenly realms.
Isn't that brilliant?
So, Anthony, what do the people that don't believe in the devil say about that?
That's a good question. You know what we've not done, though, in the Church of God is to go after people. Well, the view has been, they're not going to believe a word I say, so I'm not going to involve. I think that's not quite right. Paul was there lobbying people in the marketplace. Remember that? Yep. You're not going to win them all, but we know, because we're fishing in a big pool with this machine here. The phone will ring now every second week, just recently, more so. And people say, I've been looking at your stuff and reading books and so on. This is amazing. I've always wanted to know this. I've always wondered about it. For instance, classic story is when the nun, this person was, I was a Roman Catholic, and the nun was drawing the Trinity on the board, and I wasn't getting it. Now I'm finding you. I always sense this sort of right. I don't understand all of that. I do think, though, that we have to go after them. Just this last week, there's a section of the Church of God in South Carolina that were taught there is no devil. And that's become an identifying badge for them. Once it becomes part of the groupthink, it's very hard to penetrate that. So my job has been to interact with people of a different view, and only by doing that have I learned, I'll show you this in Matthew 24 in a moment, I've learned, how do you get to the point? This is what my dad was Director of Naval Intelligence, I mentioned that occasionally. So our whole childhood, we're only a product of our parents. You know, you've got to figure this out. Why has the Russians got these number of tanks and somebody else doesn't have? That's what Dad talked about. And often we children say, yeah, Dad, you know, that's Dad. But now I see that I've got exactly the same genes. So with the devil thing, here's what happened. We had a class on what was the topic that our good friend Dennis was doing. Nice class. Anyway, he was saying we need to be honest with facts. He's a businessman, Dennis, and he happens to be on the board of directors that have very little power in the Church of God, but he's a businessman. And he said, in the business world, we have what we call measurables. I'd never heard the word. That's a great word. We sit down and say, okay, how many churches have we closed this last year? 89. I didn't know the word, right? But he brought that to my attention. Measurables, that's a new word now. We closed 91 and we opened 89 or something. We're just about break even. Well, that's not growth. But no, we're not honest enough to face those facts and say, what are we going to do about it? So I'm sure in the business world, you'd fail very quickly if you didn't work that out. So here's what you do with the spirits thing. And I've known this for years, but it hadn't focused the point. In walks one very nice young fellow who is of that non-devil persuasion. And he piped up and he said, you know, Ezekiel says that you have to tell people the truth. They may not listen to you. In fact, many of them will not. But if you don't tell them, their blood is on your head.
Watchmen.
Watchmen.
Yes.
And I thought this was an excellent, these are good Bible students in this group of the Church of God who don't believe there's a devil on principle. So that was good. I thought, interesting. Okay, so let's think about that. I'm now going to engage him in a conversation by email. And I've now found out the question that really will be hard for him to deal with. What does it mean when it says that Jesus, after dying and rising, went and preached to the spirits in prison? All right, you know, I'll quote his own words, right? Use somebody else's words to get out of your own mouth. You said we're supposed to be Ezekiel. I'm going to try to be an Ezekiel to you here. What does that word spirits mean? I tried it out on two couples from that persuasion at the Christian Workers Seminar last week, and both of them were honest. I don't know. Well, you believe in the Bible study. They're very keen on the Strong's Concordance and all that is excellent. All right, well, go away, please, and find out what does that mean, spirits. And what in fact means is either angels or demons, not human beings. We don't have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spirits here. Unless we have an angel each, that's fine. Then we would have 8 angels, because angels are ministering spirits. Hebrews 1:14, right? What are the angels? They're ministering liturgical spirits sent out to wait and serve on those who are heirs to salvation. So they're the angels. Otherwise, what are spirits in the Bible? Human beings? No. They're souls. We've got 9 souls here. That's right. So now I'm going to say to this dear fellow, what are these spirits in prison? Well, in the conditional immortality school, that's our school of sleep of the dead, right? The dead know nothing. So you can't preach to a dead human being. That would save you from a lot of errors. Okay, he's going to have to agree with that. So what are these spirits? Well, you can look up the word spirits in any lexicon. I went to the internet just last night, it was. And there's a thing there called Got Questions. You may have seen it. It's one of the thousands that you guys could interact with. Ask them a question. Thousands of people. And they got it exactly right. They said human beings are not spirits. Angels are spirits and demons are spirits. Jesus said, I'm rejoicing, remember that? That the spirits are subject to you, the demons. Well, there are no demons in this man's mind. Can't have a demon. Can't have a fallen angel. Can't have Satan. Now, if he's got a grain of honesty, he's going to take me at my word. But I'm getting the technique, I'm getting the strategy that I'm going to go after him in a very kind way. Not punch him in the nose, not threaten him. And I won't go on doing this necessarily for 6 months. We'll see how that goes. But that's an interesting question. What are these spirits, you see? Well, Got Questions on the internet. I'm sure there are lots of sites that would tell you. You don't have human beings called spirits. You can have the spirit of just men made perfect, referring to human beings who later died, and their spirits. You do have spirit, but you are not spirit. Isn't that subtle? You're not spirit. You do have spirit. Spirit is that faculty of thinking, mind, and all that.
Yeah, the spirit in man.
Spirit in man. There is a spirit in man. People are very Western in their thinking. They want everything to be either this or that. And I learned at the Hebrew University, the year we were married in 1970, that Hebrews think by grasping a totality. So I've made the mistake of telling former Jehovah's Witnesses, Jesus is the Spirit. That's not all the truth, but sometimes it says the Lord is the Spirit. Jesus is actually called the Parakletos, the helper. He's the counselor in 1 John 2:1. He is. That's Jesus. I can handle that. Relax, don't panic. But this dear lady said, oh, my Angie's going off the rails now. I should have said, that's not the only meaning of spirit. I've learned that. I have learned that you must teach people. Some professor told me many years ago, he said, Anthony, there's a form of selfishness that teachers get. They assume that their audience knows what they know. It's not deliberate selfishness, but that's so true. You must explain. For instance, with the mechanics of doing stuff on the computer, Sarah has to tell me. How does it? I don't know. I'm lost. I've got to put in a keyword or a password. I'll give up. Can't handle it. And she has to teach me. You press this thing, even on the telephone. You've got to press this button here before you can get a long distance call. Because I don't know that. That's exactly what I was told. Anyway, that's quite interesting. So I totally agree with you.
I'm a little better than you are. Not much.
Yeah, I know.
So are you,
Measurable.
just to be clear, are you
Yeah.
saying spirits,
Yeah.
plural,
Yeah.
are never human beings?
When used
In the Bible?
absolutely. When used absolutely. That's to say, without qualification. You could have the spirits of just men made perfect. That's a faculty, part of our makeup is to have a spirit. I get that. But if you use the word spirits, linguists would say absolutely, without qualification, then I think you'll find it always means demons or angels.
Yeah, a good text is
Yeah.
1 Peter 3.
Yes.
So in 19,
Yes.
it talks about these spirits in prison.
Mm-hmm.
But then in verse 20, it talks about the people who
Yes.
came out of the ark, but the word is
Souls.
Siki.
Absolutely. You are souls. We have 9, 10 souls here. If you're talking about that faculty of your mind, which is spirit, then there are spirits sitting here in that sense, but not absolutely. See? It's a very easy point. I didn't know that. I was only, when I was trying to think, how do you get to the minds of these people? So sometimes you have to sit down and plan your strategy.
I asked this on my Facebook, and
Yes.
our response was spirits are angels,
Yes.
demons,
Yes.
and also God is called the father of the spirits.
God is called the Father. Yeah, he is. And God is spirit. That's a King James mistake. It's not God is a spirit. God is spirit. Now, a bit more technical, but you see, John uses nouns as adjectives. God is love. Doesn't mean God is one-to-one equal to love. It's a vivid way of saying God is the essence of love, right? So John does that. God is spirit, not God is a spirit.
Hebrews 12:9.
God is spirit.
Hebrews 12:9.
It says.
God is called the father of the spirits, plural, which is
Cool.
a reference to, I guess, those angelic.
No, he's the Father of our spirits.
Oh,
but
oh,
it's a spirit of human beings, you see.
Everything's spiritual.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
when you break us down, we're all energy.
Sure, that's true too.
Yeah.
That's
We're
true.
protons, electrons, atoms,
That's right.
quarks.
I'm sure. Now you've got, I don't do that
Yeah,
stuff.
that's what happens. Yeah, dust you came from, dust you shall return.
That's right. That's Barbara's point, that being a gardener, working with the soil, is actually therapeutical. What was it we were learning at the Christian Worker Seminar? You want to walk barefoot on the sand or the grass. Do it. You're getting the energy. That was brilliant. I never heard that before. Anyway, you see, Carlos does well there. He puts this out now on our Facebook. Let's see if anybody can find a fault with that. I don't think they can. The spirits of just men made perfect. It's not using the word spirits, absolutely. But if you talk about going to preach to the spirits in prison, it's either angels.
Yeah,
or
you're
spirits.
talking about a description. As a description, spirits, plural, are never human beings.
Used absolutely without qualification.
Mhm.
The spirit of man, as Terry mentioned, of course, the spirit of man, we get that. But if you see spirits used, language people would say absolutely without qualification, it only means demons or angels. Isn't that brilliant? I've never seen that. Now I'm going to go to this dear gentleman and say, out of your own mouth, you said we need to be Ezekiel's to each other. Okay, let me try this on you. I could win him. If I did, he may get kicked out of that church. I don't want that particularly. But we have to sit down and think, how do I get to an Armstrong person? I'm not sure. There are various ways. I'm sure you thought about the strategy with your own family.
The strategy is God calls.
Yes,
And
that's right.
there's a time for everybody. And when that person's called, they either accept it or deny it.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
you can plant the seed.
Of course,
And that's what
right.
the responsibility we have is to plant that seed.
You can say 1 Timothy 2:10 says that, what is it? God wants everybody to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. That's a good start.
Amen.
We do much with the proverb which says, if you bless what is evil, you're disgusting, abomination. If you curse what is good, you're disgusting. That makes good sense. If you're being trained to rule the world, wouldn't you want that in your leaders?
Yeah.
It's equally bad to bless what is bad as it is to curse what is good. So don't go there. We use those proverbs. Do you want to read that from Proverbs for us? It's what, I've forgotten some of these verses, but it's in there, 12, 15,
17.
17. Yes.
5 and
Mm-hmm.
24, 24.
You get your thesaurus online there?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, these
Bible
are
words.
very
Bible words.
Anthony verses that
Yeah.
we have at the ready.
Yeah.
They're always 17:5. He
Yeah.
who justifies.
17:15, the Lord despises
Yeah.
those who acquit the guilty
Ah.
and condemn the innocent. And then it says it again in 24:24
Yeah.
and in Isaiah 5:20.
We've got 3 verses there. I like that. If you're training your Navy SEALs to rule the world, isn't that good sense? You don't want them blessing what is evil. We've just gone through a crisis in our own movement, the wider movement, on that point where people were asked to give money to a cause they didn't even know what they were all clapping and saying, hallelujah. Wait a minute, they weren't even told who they were giving it to. Come on. Then I went to the translation of this group. I found that they had corrupted Matthew 28:19, the Great Commission. Go into the whole world, teach them to believe everything I taught you, and baptize them into the name. This group doesn't believe in water baptism. So in our magazine of May, you'll find a little quote from an expert in English that says, an unbaptized Christian is nonsense. It's impossible. So that it was interesting to me that they had asked these people to give money. It's done, quote, innocently, right? It's not done deliberately. But unless we come alongside and say, wait a minute, what are you doing? And that's already happening now. There's a protest coming. Please don't ask us to give money to a group that doesn't believe that water baptism matters and also believes that speaking in tongues can be taught. And you can show them with this machine, you can show them the very footage.
By the way, as the Isaiah 5:20
Yes, that's the one.
goes on to say,
Mhm.
woe to those who drink wine. Be careful. 5:22.
Did you stop right there?
Yeah, there's more to it.
Those who drink wine.
Yeah, there's
Where
more
are you?
to it.
Woe to those.
We're done.
Whoops.
Oh, well, we're finished. Hey,
We're done.
yeah. Hey, we're going to the hell that the Pope doesn't believe in, right?
Yeah.
Well, does he or
Well,
doesn't? I
But
think
he
he
only
took
got
it
a
back.
part
Didn't
right, didn't he? The Pope.
he? Yes, he did. Until it was corrected, though.
The torture part of it is not there. He says they cease to exist. I was blown away.
I know. But somebody
Did
tried to
you hear
retract that, though, Terry. Immediately, one of his spokesmen, the Vatican
Vatican
said, no, the Pope didn't really say that.
What did he say?
I don't know, but no, this is liars, always give themselves away.
Well,
You
the
give one
Vatican-
hand, take away the other.
The Vatican said, well, he didn't speak as Pope. What's it called?
Ex
Ex
officio?
cathedra.
Yeah.
Ex officio?
But it was his belief, his personal. They
Yeah.
didn't say it wasn't. They just said, well, he didn't
Yeah.
speak officially as a Pope.
But he got it right.
Oh, yeah.
He
Yeah,
ceased
yeah.
to exist. He was absolutely right.
Isn't that brilliant? So what are you going to do personally? What are you going to do to help the Pope? Leave him alone. Wait a minute. Have we tried? Have you written letters to the Vatican on that one? Local paper we did on the Trinity, and we got a brush off eventually because we must be Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, we're not. But I keep trying because it's only because the Christadelphians, as we say in the Church, God bless their hearts, they came to us in a moment when our guru had failed, right? Herbert Armstrong had failed. We were ready to learn. We were saying, oh, God, help us out of this mess. God sent those dear people to say, firstly, you're wrong on God the Son. There's no pre-existing God the Son, because we believed in 2 gods in the God family. I think I'd start with that with your friends. Wait a minute, 2 gods? That doesn't sound right to me. 2 gods in the God family? Yes. And then when we got through that one, and they persuaded us in about 2 or 3 months. I remember thinking about it. But the rock that followed them, I remember being on the phone with this guy. Americans, when they do the phone, they always, I can't do it. You have a way of illustrating that. I can't do that. It's a very American thing, perfectly valid thing. So I said, what about the rock that followed them was Christ? And this dear Christadelphian folk, who was far brighter than we were, he said that was a typology. Actually, Paul uses that word, typikos. He does. I'm speaking typically. It was a type. The rock was a shadow of Jesus. Oh, he's explaining. My brain said, well, he doesn't know his stuff. He was absolutely right. We were wrong. But in the Lord's grace, we found that out. Then they said, of course, you're wrong on the devil. You are the devil. I said, teacher. I remember we said, teacher, help us. And we never came up, couldn't get straight on the one.
Some comments?
Yes, please. Comments from the audience.
Michelle says, good morning. Tom has had stomach pain for 2 days non-stop. He's asleep now. Please pray for him.
Yes.
Tom Cox.
Yes.
She also said it's nice to see Terry. She haven't seen Terry for years.
Okay.
I wish we were well enough to come.
Yes.
Who is this?
Michelle and Tom
Michelle
Cox.
Oh, Con, yeah.
You know Cox? Remember?
Cox was married to Tony Hammer at one time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So there might be some people out there that knew me.
No, there are.
There's one.
Now
Yeah,
you're in
there are.
trouble.
Oh,
If
yeah.
they're out of the Worldwide Church of God and went back that far.
Right.
Randy said the liquor store down the street says that they serve spirits.
Randy is terrific. He's an IT man. Some of our most favorite people are IT people. They're very bright.
Tell them I drink those spirits.
That's good. So there's a break in the rule. But those are not persons. So when you talk about persons, personalities as spirits, absolutely without qualification, it means either angels or demons. All right. So how are you going to deal with that? I won't mention his name. Let's see. I may not succeed. I might turn the whole church around. I'm going to try. Only because the Christadelphians were kind enough to say to us, come on, you shouldn't believe in the devil. There is no devil. You're the devil. Fine, teach me. That equipped us then to meet the Church of God. We didn't even know they existed. I didn't know they existed. We came all the way to the States to find you guys. We said in picnics in California, we said, are there any people even like you? They said, there is something called Abraham's Church. I said, give me that phone number. I phoned the editor of the magazine at that time and said, hi, my name's Anthony. We're from England. Do you believe in the devil? Yes. We were home. Anyway, that's where we were. Yes. We need to get on. Matthew 24. Yep, Matthew 24. Why is this interesting to me? Because it's been a, quote, problem. If you read theological literature, everything is a problem. That word problem occurs more often than any other word I'm thinking. Scholarly so-called literature, where they don't actually believe in the Bible. You could be at Harvard and not even believe in God and teach theology. That's amazing. Public doesn't know that, doesn't care. So if you haven't got a chessboard to play chess on, forget it. When you go to a soccer match, no white lines, that's silly, isn't it? Then I say, well, what sort of software did Paul have on his computer? That's silly. We all know that. So if you haven't got a Bible, when properly understood, get the right Greek manuscripts, you can argue about some details. That's not really relevant. I think Jesus was a Bible person. He always says, it is written. What did he say to them, the liberals of the day? He says, you're much mistaken because you don't know the scriptures. That's clear to me. Now, I also know that Jesus was raised from the dead. I'm going to be debating a Jewish anti-Messiah, anti-Jesus person at some point, Tovia Singer. So we're going to talk about all that. My main argument is, I think that Luke is more likely to know what happened than you do. You go to a car accident and you didn't, or you saw exactly what happened in the car accident. And then a week later, somebody comes along and says, I know better. No, you weren't even there. So on the simple principle of witness, right? What was Luke trying to get out of me with all that stuff? Was he trying to make money out of it? I don't think. Was he drunk when he wrote? I don't think so. Then I would tend to believe that. I believe Jesus is alive. If it's proven false, then the faith is gone. It's going to do something more useful. Okay, Matthew 24 is a huge problem in the commentaries. Why is it a problem? Jesus looks out on those buildings in front and he says, not a stone will remain one on top of the other. It's all going to fall down. And then he goes on to talk about his parousia. I'm using that word deliberately. That's the word for second coming. It's a big muddle now when people talk about the rapture because it's now come to mean the pre-tribulation rapture. So it's a dead word. It's confusing. People are, you believe in the rapture? Well, you've got to define the term before I can even talk about it. So I'm using the Greek word parousia. It means the arrival of a king to take over his territory. We know that from the literature of the time. Second coming. So in Matthew 24, if you have any translation, it's fine. We don't prefer the King James because it's archaic and difficult for people. But the New American Standard Version with the marginal references is wonderful. The RSV and RSV, all of that is wonderful. Even the Catholic Bible, the NAB, New American Bible, it's done by lots of different translators. Don't panic. You'll get the truth out of every translation there is. Every translation is about 98% right, everywhere. So it's not a big deal. But this is the NASU. In Matthew 24, what we normally do is read some verses round. So as long as we have a little time here, I will start with 24:1. Anybody wants to read, has a Bible handy, chime in with the verse. 24:1 goes like this. Jesus came out, let's see, from the temple, right? Came out from the temple, and he was going away. When his disciples came up to him to point out the temple buildings to him. Verse 2. Sarah?
Oh, you can.
Okay. And he said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Truly I say to you, not one stone here will be left upon another, which will not be torn down."
Mm-hmm. Verse 3.
Later, Jesus sat on the slopes of the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to him privately and asked, "When will all this take place?
Mm-hmm.
And will there be any sign ahead of time to signal your return
Yes.
and the end of the age?"
Good. And 4. All right, 4 out of 4. Jesus answered and said to them, "See to it that no one," and I ask the audience for synonyms, bamboozles, what are the American words for this? Takes you in, fools you. Isn't that interesting?
Scams.
Scam. So this is the area where you're going to get scammed. And Jesus keeps saying, don't be scammed. So that's exactly what they do in church. They don't think. So don't let anybody scam you. Many will come in my name saying I'm representing the Messiah, probably. Not many people have come saying they are the Messiah, but probably the meaning, probably. Or both, doesn't matter. Will come misleading you with the word Christ. And verse 5 then, many will come in my name saying I'm the Messiah and will mislead many. That was your point, right?
Yep.
If you're not wary, and we weren't in the Church of England days, we didn't know anything about anything. Sermons every Sunday. I couldn't have engaged you in any conversation on the Bible. I know, I'm not lying to you, I was there. We didn't do Bible. So we were totally misled without even intending to be. Then, Sarah, you've got 6.
You will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not frightened, for these things must take place, but that is not yet the end.
Okay, let's stop and think about that. In conversation, when we use a word in a sentence and then the same word a couple of sentences later, one of the fundamental laws of language is that you don't mean something different, right? If you really want to get people messed up, you change the meaning of a word, right? We know that. So here's what historicism does. The people who don't believe in the future events as we do, they say the end there is not the same as the end in the question. Well, it is. They ask, what will be the sign of your coming, parousia, and end of the age? Technicians, you need some technicians. Heaven forbid that, you only pay attention to technicians. But in any business, you need a technical element, don't you, who understand the detail. In the Greek there, it's interesting. What will be the sign of your coming and end of the age? Not coming and the end of the age even. One article binds those two ideas together. What will be the sign of your coming and end of the age? Beautiful.
Implicit is this the understanding of that word age?
Absolutely. Age, everything.
Christ, the church, age, right? End of that.
The end of that age. Yes. Not even the church age. It is in a sense, but that's not a biblical, but exactly. End of the age. Now you've got 2 ages, one in the future and one now. That's brilliant. And Bishop Wright, who is the brightest in the evangelical world, he's corresponded with us graciously here and there. In his translation, he has the life of the age to come. Now you need to preach on this. I said to the student, I want you to preach on this 5 times every Sunday. Meaning, people don't understand this, you see?
John 17:3.
John 17:3.
This is life.
This is the essence of life in the coming age, immortality.
That you believe.
That you believe. Then you tell them about the crime scene. Augustine said it should read that you believe that the Father and the Son is the one God. Yeah. You see, public's got to get excited about this. You wouldn't put up with that in business, would you? Do you allow the bank to swindle it without protest? Augustine hailed as the greatest thing ever since Paul. He says this should read, you can read it in his homilies on John, it should read, This is eternal life. They believe in you, Father, and Jesus Christ, the only true God. How do you get people excited about that? And they, I want to get their blood boiling. Go to the pastor and ask about that. Do they preach on the Trinity now? Another subject. Anyway, so what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?
Blocks fit in here.
The blocks.
The blocks.
Right, the blocks. Okay. The blocks simply go like this. You have, it's hard for me to do it now without looking at it this way. PEN. Yeah. Okay. So it goes like this from left to right. The present evil age, followed by the kingdom of God. If you then move this one on top of there and do heaven, you've destroyed the narrative. That's what's happened. It's now become heaven instead of the present, the future age, the kingdom of God. The present evil age, as Galatians 1:4, kingdom of God. That's all it blocks. I didn't know that. I sat through the, quote, best education in England. We went to chapel every Sunday and to chapel every day. I sang in the choir, and that was cool. I reckon it's cool to sing in the choir. I cannot remember a single sermon of anybody except when an American preacher came. I've told this too many times, but his name was the Reverend O'Heck. It was. God has a sense of humor. His name was the Reverend O'Heck. He got up in this raised pulpit. We had 600 little boys in the sporting school, little grey ties and grey shirts, clutching their books. And he said, Samson was a strong man. Something like that. I was riveted. What a fascinating way to speak English. I mean, the thing I can do fairly well is language. Hopeless in geography, hopeless in history, mathematics, totally spaced out. But he said, Samson was a strong man. Then he said, he built an ice cream machine, Samson did. And he said it had cogs and whistles and feathers and bells and all that. I'm absolutely riveted, this voice. Then he said, did that machine work? No! Maybe from Minnesota. He was, I don't know, but his name was the Reverend O'Heck. He was doing the rounds at all the private boarding schools where we were. What he said, the point of the sermon, I have no idea. But that much I remember. Isn't that amazing? We didn't know, and my family get tired of me saying, we didn't know nothing about nothing. We didn't know nothing. I think that's a much more exciting way of saying we didn't know anything, right? That's very boring. But we didn't know nothing about that. We didn't. I'm not lying to you. I couldn't have known any of those things. That story, as you know, in our case, was Armstrong came along and said, you should be keeping the Sabbath. 10 Commandments, come on, Ashley, 10 Commandments. Well, sure. Where is it? I fumbled through, I found it. It says you should rest on Saturday. It does. That changed my life for 14 years. Into the vacuum of ignorance comes the devil with a twisted version. Isn't that amazing? So I think the lesson is teach your children the truth and then never fall for Herbert Armstrong, ever. Okay, back to the subject. What will be the sign of your coming and end of the age? These are Jesus' students, by the way. They're not dummies. They didn't get it all right, but they had been taught by Messiah, Rabbi Messiah, for 3 years or so. And so they naturally say, they're looking at these buildings, and he says it's all going to fall down. And they say, tell us, what will be the sign of your parousia and end of the age? Isn't that brilliant? Some people then say those dumb disciples, they didn't know what they were talking about. There is no end of the age, and they just write off the whole thing. That's pathetic. Jesus then explains it. Did you get the impression here that he said, there'll be no signs? No. I don't think so. But there's a whole school out there that you need to go after to help them with this. He didn't say, well, actually, there'll be no signs. It'll just happen totally unexpectedly. Because he said there, this is not yet the end. You see that in verse 6? I do think that wars and rumors of wars is a bit vague. It doesn't entirely tell me anything. I've seen wars.
Been going on for
forever.
6,000 years.
Yeah, so it's not exactly specific.
It's the intensity building.
It's the intensity. It's going to get worse. Then in 7, nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Various places there'll be famines, and as Luke says, great earthquakes. Well, we've had earthquakes. I know, this isn't quite clear to me. I'd be sitting there with my hand up in the front row and say, explain this further. And he did. All these things are the beginning of birth pangs. That's a very Jewish image. The Bible said, and the rabbis understood, that the kingdom age will be preceded by birth pangs because it's the birth of the new age. So the nice image from bearing a child, those are the beginning of the birth pangs. Now, as it turns out, this is the key to solving the quote problem. As it turns out, 70 AD, when there was a destruction of Jerusalem, turned out not to be the one he's talking about. I don't think he knew that. Jesus himself said, I don't, only the Father knows the extended times. That's brilliant. See, our Christology kicks in there. We don't believe he's God. So he doesn't know. He says, I don't know. All he knows is Daniel and the prophets. He knows that in Daniel, there's going to be trouble in the temple, followed by the parousia in the kingdom. He knows that. As it turns out, this is the bit that I'm adding to the commentaries that don't seem to see this. As it turns out, 70 AD wasn't it, was it? But you've got people called preterists who say it was. So Christ came back in 70 AD. Does that make any sense to you?
And the kingdom is not.
Yes, yes.
The kingdom is not.
That is amillennialism, and that is Augustine, who says that the kingdom began at the cross. So now you have been living in the kingdom of God, which, and you're smiling, I said to my friends. And then I said, well, wait a minute. You've got 23, well, more than that, millions of amillennial people who believe that, following Augustine. And you're shaking your head. I said, well, they're not more or less intelligent than you are. So how do you get people to believe that? I remember stepping onto the tube train, that's the underground train in London, going to the American school, your American school, where they were very kind to us in many ways. And I remember thinking, I've got to sort this millennial question out. How does that work? And here's how it works. Terry mentioned this already. It says in Revelation 12:9 that the Satan is now deceiving the entire world. He's the God of the age, God of the world. He has a lot of churches, doesn't he? If you're the God of something, you've got a lot of power. So Satan is the God of this age. I get it. Revelation 12:9. But in Revelation 20, it says an angel comes and arrests that devil, puts him in the abyss so that he cannot deceive the nations any longer. Do you want me to give you a theological discourse on that? I mean, here, our people are reading their Bible now and not reading it at the same time. That's just, it's dementia, is right.
Just like Luther said, it was the book of straw, right? Revelation.
Isn't that awful? That's James, actually.
James.
Ein Strohbrief. I tell our German friends, we're going to a German conference, so he said, Ein Strohbrief. Luther also said early in his ministry, the book of Revelation is not a Christian book, shouldn't be in the canon.
That's what I was
What? But they're all traipsing into a Lutheran church. This is painful
Just
ignorance.
on Terry's preterism, someone wrote to me this
Thank you.
morning,
Yes.
if this is the kingdom of our God and of his Christ, they are both slum lords.
Ooh.
Hey, absolutely.
Well put. Quotable quote.
And it reminded me when I was in my home country of Nicaragua,
Yes.
which is being controlled by a despot on the similar level to the North Korean little fella. And
Rocket
it's a my home country. I'm sad to say it's a mess. You know, it's a third world country, but we saw big billboards all over the place saying things like,
Jesus is the Lord and owner of Nicaragua.
Yes.
"Jesus is the Lord and owner."
Excuse
And
me.
I look at the what are they called potholes?
Oh, yeah.
There are potholes that are more like caverns,
Sinkholes.
sinkholes. And I said to myself, well, if this is Jesus, because I don't want Jesus as mine.
Yeah,
No.
The guy controls
That's
he's
it.
good.
not doing a good job, and I feel very sorry for him if he's the owner of this.
Yes.
See, they use it's a socialist system,
Yes.
and they use religion as socialists do, Christianity,
That's
to
right.
control the masses.
Was it in Nicaragua? We spoke in universities there, right?
Yeah,
The one subject they wanted to discuss everywhere was tithing.
tithing.
That's the only thing they really would say. Does the pastor have a right to take a tenth of my income mathematically? I said, no, not in the new covenant. Not in the new covenant. It's for supporting the Levites. You want to give to any cause you believe in. That's wonderful. But that was the real issue for them. It's fun.
And it's a good principle. Some should give more, probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
But
a
it's
fine principle.
interesting that in the midst of that mess, and you're worried about tithing.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
should you be
Yes.
worried about the kingdom of
Yes.
God on earth and how do we fix this mess? And
We had fun. We were in 3 different universities, weren't we, over there?
Yeah.
And they wanted to be engaged, but the main topic was, are we bound mathematically to a tenth? And I suggested to them that Paul didn't teach that to the Corinthians because he said, I didn't take any money from it. I could have it, I didn't bother. I don't think he was teaching them the tenth, but if you want to give the tenth, that's fine. Nothing to argue about.
since we're on this topic
Yes.
and related to
Mhm.
Matthew 24, a lot of the preterist argument
Yes.
is based on the fact that, well, things are better
Mhm.
and have been getting better.
Yes. Okay.
Say the preterists.
Yes. Yes.
What would your response be to that? So we're living longer, there are better drugs, you know.
But
girls-
Jesus didn't come back. So an invisible second coming, that's Jehovah's Witnesses in 1880. It's Jehovah's Witnesses in 1914. It's Herbert Armstrong in 1975, predicting it. Did you see Jesus come? No, it came invisibly. Paul says that is cancer. He names Philetus and Hymenaeus. He names those two and said, if you believe that Christ came back invisibly, that's cancer. I wouldn't go for it. Cyanide in your coffee. Go for it. If you want to die, you believe rubbish like that. So that settled the issue for me, getting off the tube. I can remember the moment exactly. I thought, I've got it. You can't be reading the same book and not reading the same book at the same time. So if the devil is now deceiving the whole world, in the millennium, he cannot deceive them any longer. That's got to be future. End of argument. I got that. I've never forgotten it. I think it's right.
Carlos, I would say this:
Yeah.
the world is getting better technologically,
Ah,
not
good.
morally.
Good point.
Mhm.
Good point.
Certainly.
That's a nice distinction. Well, it certainly is with these machines, isn't it? Yeah, good point. Okay, so you've got my language point there. When Jesus says the end is not yet, there's only one end in the conversation. It's the end of the age, the end of the age.
Simple.
Very simple. But nobody knows it.
Gospel is simplicity.
Very, very, very much.
And how did you define the word age?
The end of the age is the end of the aeon. There are two ages, the present evil age, followed by the age to come. So all translations should have not eternal life. It's not wrong, but it's fog. It's vague. It allows you to think of going to heaven when you die. Then you've got the narrative wrong. You've got a false narrative and you're dying. You're drinking the Kool-Aid or whatever it was. Jim Jones.
That's why they have to get rid of Revelation. Without Revelation, we wouldn't have that roadmap.
No.
Right to the very end.
Absolutely right. And Revelation, you can tell people, is only a conglomeration of about 440 allusions or citations to the prophets. So Jesus loved all that. So we had a dear lady who dialogued on this issue, so I'm doing it without notes because I know this well. 9 months on this subject. And she's convinced that there are no signs Christ can come back today. And she's anti-Zionist, and I am too. She was right. The rabbis say, unless you've got Messiah in Jerusalem, you can't have the kingdom now. So Zionism is also wrong. You don't love a Jew just because he's a Jew. Jesus said that. Your father is the devil. Oh, we're children of Abraham. Well, bully for you. Actually, no. The devil is your father. So you don't love a Jew just because he's a Jew. The Abrahamic people went wrong because they said in Genesis 12, he who blesses you is doing good. He who curses you, Abraham. They said, oh, it's the Jews. No. You are the seed of Abraham. They nearly threw me out for that, by the way. I dared to say, now I believe in the future of Israel, the nation. I do. That's clear. But in giving one truth, they weren't able to handle the two truths. It's also true that you are the Israel of God. You're the true circumcision. Don't give away your identity to an unconverted Jew. That was my point. And two of them who didn't believe there was a Satan said, get him out of that college. They weren't able to handle the grasping of a totality. Both things are true. So it's a major point. The end then is not yet. I get it. Then as you read down, other things are going to happen. They will hand you over to tribulation. That's not the great tribulation yet. We've all experienced tribulation, I think, in our lives. I get that. Many fake prophets, look at this 11. Many false, fake clergy, lying clergymen. Do they get up and intend to lie? No. Do they get up in the morning and say, I'll show these people how I'll lie through my teeth? But they haven't done the homework. My father said to me, he didn't lecture us very often. He said, you'll find out, lad, as you go through life, that most people are just in the group thing. Group thing. They haven't thought. And our job as educators is to say, please think. Teachers try to do that. Okay, so you've got all this stuff here. Now, like 13, the one who endures to the end. Now, there the end would have a different meaning. I get that. Enduring to the end of your life, probably, right? The end is not exactly the end of the age there. But wait a minute. What about 14? This gospel of the kingdom will be heralded in the whole world as a testimony, as a witness to all the nations. And then what? The end will. I get it, Jesus. I understand you. You talked about the end of the age, and then you said the end is not yet. Now you say that's when the end comes. When does it come? When you see the AFD, the abomination of desolation, in Mark's version, standing where he ought not to. These are the technical things. The he there in Mark 13, 14, the parallel. You get this text 3 times over, you know that. Why? Because it's so important, probably. Why have you got 3 versions of Jesus' teaching? And you've got John as well, but you've got 3. Well, because it's so important. Don't want to miss it. So what do they not preach from? These Gospels. They don't. If you listen to the sermons of Billy Graham and the boys, they mostly preach from isolated verses in Paul, not from here. And the one thing you mustn't miss is the teaching of Jesus. And Paul did well too, of course. So what I've come along to the group and say, let's look at Paul and the kingdom of God. He preached the kingdom of God in Acts clearly, just like Jesus did. So one of my colleagues said, if Paul preached a different gospel from Jesus, Paul would put himself under his own curse. That's good line. Bill Wattell, you might remember him. Okay, so the end will come. Now, therefore, when you see, isn't that brilliant? This is when the end will come. When you see the AFD, the abomination of desolation, standing where he, masculine pronoun, breaking the rules of grammar, technical point, but interesting. The abomination is a person standing where he ought not to, in a temple building, presumably, some holy place. Then what are you supposed to do? It doesn't say what you do in Georgia. You go and stay with Terry Anderson in Minnesota, or whatever.
In the cold.
In the cold.
Freezing.
Isn't that interesting? See what's happening now in the story? He's beginning to talk about the end of the age and the parousia. But they were looking at those buildings. You see, how, that's difficult for people. That's difficult.
Actually, just
Yeah.
off the top of your head,
Yeah.
or anyone else, can we have a verse or a parallel where end of the age is equals to the judgment
Yeah.
or the resurrection?
Absolutely. You've got 5, and that's exactly what you do. With word studies, you get your magic machine, I call it in class. Your Bible works 8, 9, 10, is it? Strong's
9.
Concordance is old, fine, but it's terribly slow. This thing will find out end of the age 5 times in Matthew. Is what you do. Okay, what did Matthew mean when he said end of the age? Then we'll know what the parousia is. So you make your equations. You string the pearls and you join the dots.
1339. The harvest is the end of the
Got
age.
it. Let's start with that one.
Yep.
1339. The harvest, I get it, is the end of the age. Was it 70 AD? As it turns out, and Jesus didn't know, I don't think. That's been the problem for people, right? How can you look at those buildings and then talk about the second coming? You can if you think, relax and think like a Hebrew. Because in the book of Haggai, I won't turn to it, but in Haggai, it says, this building in its present form, and this building as it used to be, and this building as it's going to be. That's to think in a Hebraic manner, to grasp the totality, but people in the West don't do that well. So this is a major problem. I'll tell you where it goes wrong in the commentaries just briefly in a moment. So when you see the abomination of desolation standing where he ought not to, then you go back to the, as you said, end of age. You got it there in Matthew 13.
Yeah, so the context is about the seeds
Yeah.
sown by the Son of Man
Of course.
versus the seed sown by the devil.
Yeah.
The harvest is the end of the
Got
age.
it.
The reapers are angels. The weeds are gathered up, burned up.
Yes.
So it will be at the end of the age.
Got it. There's the second one.
And then the Son of Man will send out his angels,
Yes.
gather
Gather
them.
in the four winds.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. It's
So
either the
this
barn or the bonfire. You need some slogans. In business, I know you need slogans. Everybody has, Coke is it. It isn't, but that's a bad slogan. You have a slogan. So one of the slogans would be then, end of the age would be barn or bonfire. You'll have to go into the burning of the bonfire or into the barn, the wheat into the kingdom. All right, so we've done 2 of them right there.
Anthony, may I
Yes,
ask?
please.
And that looks forward to the second resurrection, because nobody is finally judged until the end of that second resurrection.
Yeah, but you're clear. You're not in the second resurrection.
Right? Well, maybe not. That's up to God to judge. I think judgment gets down to not the part where we need to, as Christians, discern good and evil.
Yeah,
Judgment comes into saying, you're going to hell and you're going to
Yeah,
burn,
that's right.
and that's it.
Yeah.
We don't know that because we don't know God's plan.
Paul
People
is
can
very,
change.
very
What,
positive.
Anthony,
Yes.
what if we would have died
Yeah.
before we had this knowledge?
Oh, well, that's up to God to deal with that.
Yeah,
The second resurrection.
That's the judgment.
Yes,
Are you going to be in the first resurrection or
Yeah.
the second?
that's right.
But the second is
Yes.
final. That's
Paul is a
final.
little bit more positive, though. He doesn't
That-
say, I hope I'll be there.
Right.
And he does watch himself. I get that. But that's a little bit of a Herbert thing. We can't do no, we're wrong. That was a little bit off balance, I think.
For the scum of the earth.
Yes. Actually, you should be on the positive side. I'm fully convinced you're going to be in the kingdom. And you should be. Yeah, you got a bad attitude.
And then I got a connection to the end of the age as
Yeah,
well.
yes.
I got I don't remember which paraphrase or translation of
Okay.
Daniel 12:13.
Yes,
But as for you, Daniel,
Yes.
go your way
Yes.
until the end
yes,
of your life.
of your life.
For
Yes.
you will rest and
Yes.
rise again for your allotted inheritance
In the
at the
kingdom.
end of the age.
Yes. So the angel didn't say to Daniel, well, I'm hoping you're going to make it. I think we should be very much on the positive side there. But still watching ourselves lest we be a castaway. I get that. But the Herbert Armstrong thing was predictably negative because there's so much was wrong in the teaching there.
And the reason this is important to define what the
Yes.
word age means
Mm.
is because this whole preterist
Yes.
thing where they have redefined it to mean
Eternity.
or Torah, the end of Torah with
Oh,
the
yes.
temple
Yes.
destruction in
Oh,
70
70
AD.
right.
And that was the end of the Torah age.
Right.
Good point.
It's just
So-
wrong.
Yep,
It's
that's
the end
what
of
I-
the age leading to the age to come. So the translation that Bishop Wright has the life of the age to come. That's easy. I would teach that first Sunday if I were a pastor. And let's get this clear. Then you can do your performance on the famous Fiddler on the Roof. I've done it over and over again. You remember the scene, and all your children should see that, because it's a good Jewish story. When they get a little tipsy, they had alcohol at the wedding. Remember in that show? I'm not advocating dancing on the tables, that's another thing. But they sing, to life, l'chaim. You get a little Hebrew there. To life, in Hebrew, l'chaim. You get an umbrella in the front row when you're doing Hebrew, l'chaim. That's exactly what you have in Daniel 12:2. Those whose names are written in the book of life are going to get the life of the age. In Hebrew, chaye olam. Olam means the age. Chaye, the life of the age. And the rabbis were very clever, smart. They said, if it's resurrection life, it's the life of the age to come. That comes into our New Testament 41 times as the life of the age to come. Isn't that beautiful? But I didn't hear anything about that in church. We were going to fly off to heaven if we were good, if we didn't kick the cat, we weren't rude to Aunt Bessie. Just we were good people.
Good.
We go to heaven.
I always try to say decent.
Decent. I like
As
that.
Jesus said, there's none good.
I like that. I like that too.
Decent.
If we didn't have meat on Friday, what else? And if we're Baptists, if we didn't touch that wicked alcohol, that'll put you in eternal hellfire. Anthony, your narrow hips are going to burn forever. I've got the handout to give you guys. I won't read the copy of that. What you said. Most of the comments are very positive. In fact, I'll remind you, you're the one who says when I get the magazine, I always read the comments first. I would
Oh, I
too.
do.
I do.
Aren't they?
I think everybody does.
Yeah, exciting.
I mean, that's great hope to see the gospel's going out throughout the world.
It is.
And God has got elect scattered throughout the world. And
Absolutely.
it's wonderful. I just love reading that.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish we had
Yeah.
4 pages on those comments.
I think we'll just scrap the whole thing and just put
Sarah?
comments. We could do it. We could actually do
I
it.
think you really ought to add
Sometimes we
more.
could, yeah.
Maybe.
Because I think it's great hope for everybody to
Yeah.
see those. And in the trials and tribulations some of those people are going through. I have been through none of that.
I know.
We are so blessed to have what we've had for decades and
That's so
decades.
true. We're wondering about going to Istanbul. That's what we're planning to do. And then Barbara read something about how an American was put in prison for 35 years for doing Christian stuff. But our friends have reassured us that Turkey is a Christian nation. I mean, it allows. Is that right?
It's not illegal to be a missionary.
Okay. We may get away with it in the hotel. We're going
There
to
are
fly
many
to.
churches, there are many.
Yeah.
Well,
You know.
Erdogan fancies himself as the next imam. I think
I think he probably does.
the one to come. He's trying to institute this caliphate.
You know, it's
In Turkey.
It's
Gotta be
interesting
careful.
because modern day Turkey is where the 7 churches are.
Yes. Yes.
So really, that's some even call it the cradle of
And
the
the
early
Western
Christian
Christian
movement.
church. Yeah.
Anthony, just to go back to
Yep.
the end of the age.
Yes.
So
Okay.
we are seeing in context that the end, specifically of the age,
Yes.
has to do with judgment and the
Of
resurrection.
course, the day of the Lord.
So we got Matthew
Harvest.
13:39.
39, 40, and 49.
Yes.
No, but can you explain that in light of verses like, I'll just take one because I just saw this in the NLT, Hebrews 9:26,
The what translation?
the New Living Translation.
NLT.
If it had been necessary, Christ would have had to die again and again,
Yeah.
ever since the world began.
Yeah.
But now,
Yeah.
once for all time,
Yeah.
he has appeared at the end of the age
Yes. End of the
remove sin.
ages or singular plural?
They have singular.
Consummation. It's the consummation of the ages.
Yes.
So
Of the
they
ages,
have the
yeah.
NLT at the end of the age for some reason. to
I've
remove
forgotten if
sin,
it's
but-
plural or not there, we'd have to look at it. But relax, because there's a sense in which the end of the age came when Jesus was there. That's
right.
true. You have to handle that.
That last 2,000 years is that age.
Exactly. That can also be said in the New Testament. Not a problem.
Most have plural ages.
Ages.
But for some reason, the NLT has age.
It's not right. It should be end of the ages. And ages is everything that happens in those times as well. Now, that's exactly the relaxation we need of audiences. No, don't panic.
Which
You
is
know.
also
Yeah.
the aeonos,
Yeah.
plural,
Yeah.
the ages
Yeah.
will come to an end
Yeah.
at the second coming.
That's true.
And a
And
new one
even beyond that, right?
will commence, right?
And then you go into the ages of the ages. That's into
That's
forever.
20.
A-
Revelation.
Anthony,
Yeah.
in the New Testament churches, when they were gathering in houses like this,
Mhm.
they had disagreements, and
Yeah.
Paul had to
Oh, yes.
correct them. No,
Great
don't do
summary.
this, don't do that. This is not correct. So I mean, what's going on? Just like we're discussing.
Exactly right.
The key is that
Yes.
we don't disparage anybody for asking a question.
No.
So
and we
who's-
handle all
That's,
of these
that's a
things
favorite
in the
theme
spirit of
ours,
Christ.
Right.
So who's Paul here?
Yeah.
Who's the
Then
one
we
gonna
no,
bring us
we
all?
give the sermon on this. You cannot have apostles like Paul now. You cannot. You have to have seen Jesus, number one, and you have to have the accrediting signs and wonders to be an apostle. So forget Herbert being an apostle.
We have the word.
Yes, we do. You could have apostolic. I hate the term. Let's not call anybody an apostle. It's just misleading.
Yeah.
But you cannot be an apostle at the level of the 12 or 13 with Paul, because you haven't got the accrediting signs and you have not seen Jesus
Right.
personally. That's the end of that story. Okay, that's a good point. So we've got what we're actually doing the exercise there, collecting end of the age. We found it there in Matthew 13, 3 times, Sarah? And then we found it also then,
Daniel 12.
that's the Old Testament. In the New, we've got another one. What's that one?
Matthew 28,
28.
19.
Okay,
and 20.
let's just refer to that one. No need to turn to it next day. I'm going to be with you until the end of the age. Matthew 28, 19. Now then, our dear friends will say, our friends in the X-Wave group butchered that verse. They took the word out, baptizing. This is the crime scene. This really gets me started. Some people want to give money to these, but I wouldn't give them money. I mean, you can be friends with them, help them out, but they actually, in their translation, they say the word baptizing shouldn't be there. What's in every manuscript? They took it out. They put a footnote. Well, the Shem Tov, that's supposed to be a Hebrew version of the New Testament, which is not scripture at all, has something like that. That is absolute fraud, my dear man. I'm going to have to warn these people strongly. You cannot play with scripture like that.
The revised English
English
version
version.
of Spirit and Truth.
You have the note there on Matthew 28.
Yeah, the Shem Tov, and they point to the fact that apparently Eusebius of Nicomedia
Yeah, that's right.
at the council, which is an interesting
Yeah.
bit of information, used a text.
Yeah,
He got a manuscript
yeah.
that did not contain the so-called.
The Trinitarian thing, yes, but did that text get rid of the word baptism? The one they're
Yes,
alluding to?
because it says.
so.
Oh no, you're right. It goes forward. So it just says baptizing the name.
Yeah, but it says still says baptized. But these rogues, these guys, good people, whatever phrase we use, they've taken it out. You can't do that. That's dangerous because you're twisting the scripture to your own destruction. That's awful. Okay, we got diverted there. Then it gets very exciting when he says in 15 then, therefore, when you see the A of D, that's 4 times in Daniel, in chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 9, chapter 11. Most people don't pay attention to that. Jesus says in parentheses, or the writer says in parentheses, be careful to listen carefully. I'm talking about Daniel, so that's exactly what we don't do. They make it up. It was the Pope or something else. Okay, so there it is. That's the warning. If you're in Judea, you have to flee. What you do in Georgia, I don't know. I have no idea what we do. Have to wait and see.
Hey, Isaiah 26.
Isaiah 26, which says
Go into your dwellings and close the door until the Lord be passed over.
that the
For he
word.
comes out of his place to
Yes.
punish the earth.
Yes, it would be a hiding place of some sort.
Could
Petra
be
was
your
what we
home.
thought, and all that. I don't know about Petra, maybe Petra, but if you're in Georgia, I don't go into Petra.
I
Might
don't
be,
think
but
so.
anyway, we'll see. But the story is beautiful here. then if it's in the winter, that's not going to be so good. Or on the Sabbath. Only Matthew mentions that with a particular interest in the Jewish audience. Mark doesn't even mention the Sabbath. If you want to keep the calendar, go for it. But the calendar is a shadow, and the Messiah risen is the substance. I don't want to do the shadows when we've got Messiah.
So why did he say Sabbath here when this was looking forward to the Christian
Well, because
churches?
people in Judea would still be keeping. We saw that in Israel.
Yeah.
We saw some rabbis trying to stone a kid for bicycling on
But this is
Saturday.
talking about Christians.
But the gates
Yes,
would be
but they closed the
on
gates.
Sabbath
It's harder to
day.
get out.
Jerusalem.
Doesn't mean they're keeping the Sabbath, I think. That would contradict everything else. But it's harder to function in the winter, like external things, or Sabbath keeping, probably that would be the reason. Anyway, you get the point. The problem, quote, has been for commentators, how do you deal with this? Because he's looking at these buildings, you see. Then he goes on to talk about the second coming. Well, the second coming wasn't in 70 AD. But they've got their verse. This generation will not pass until all these things happen. That's the preterist cry. The word Yene'ah does not mean nation. That doesn't work. Meaning the Jewish nation will go on. That's wrong. It doesn't mean 40 years. It means evil society. And how do you know that? Because the very next line, Jesus said, heaven and earth will pass away. See the parallel? He explains himself in the next line. Heaven and earth, this present evil society will not pass away till all these things have happened. That's the solution to that one. That's easy. Got good articles on that written by others too. Otherwise, he was wrong, right? If he said 40 years, Jesus failed. That's impossible. So it's explained in the very next line. Heaven and earth, the present evil society will not come to an end until all of these awful things have happened. Okay, woe to you then if you're pregnant at that time, in verse 19. So how long could the Great Tribulation be? Do you think 2,000 years will work? You're smiling, but the dear people of Church of God, I didn't win with Bill Ortell even on this point. They had been taught by a guru, by the way, somebody who was very fierce, unlike most of the Church of God. They'd been taught that the Great Tribulation was definitely 70 AD. Then they're stuck with verse 29. Somebody read verse 29 here. What does that say? Verse 29.
I'll read it. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven and the powers of the heavens will be shaken.
And they'll see the Son of Man coming in great glory, which is the second coming. Yeah. Oh, that's a problem. Immediately after. Let's argue about immediately after. Let's not. Those dear people who are historicists, the technical historians, not preterists, but historicists, they said, it's got to be 70 AD because they're looking at that building. I get that. That's the problem that I'm solving here. It doesn't matter for Jesus. They knew about trouble in the temple. Jesus himself didn't know. There might be 1,500 temples, I suppose, theoretically. I don't think it's true, but not 70 AD. Otherwise, immediately after isn't going to work. So I wrote to Donald Hagner, who has the Word Biblical Commentary on this point, how do you deal with this? And he winds up saying in a very convoluted and difficult way, language that most people couldn't understand, Matthew got this wrong. Matthew edited that immediately after and got it wrong. Isn't that interesting? That's awfully bad. Matthew's editing was wrong because it gives the impression that the second coming would come immediately after the temple destroyed in 70. You get the point? Isn't that interesting? The way the human mind works. No, immediately after, there's got to be trouble close to the end here.
Plus, all scripture is God breathed.
Of course. They don't believe that out there. They don't learn that in theological
They think
school.
it's Matthew talking. It's not Matthew
No.
talking. It's not
That's right.
Paul.
He said Matthew edited this wrong. That is scholarship. And don't give your funds to some liberal scholar. I mean, that's just terribly wrong. Not that you would think that. Okay. So, I'm just giving to get the main point over. So he then says in verse 21, there will be great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning, nor ever will. How many of those can you have? Only one? Is that right? There never has been. This is an important subject, you think. The worst time of human history ever. Worse than now? Yes. Worse than the Second World War, where my mother and nanny, that's not grandmother, but the nanny who was hired to work with us, they had their garden shovels ready for the Nazis who were coming 22 miles across the channel. We were on the brink of disaster. But this is much worse. Is this worth a sermon or two? Oh, we don't preach sermon. And I'll talk this afternoon probably to the pastor at a Methodist church. We're doing a concert, not a religious thing, but a concert there. And I will get round to asking her, what do you make of the Matthew 24 stuff? And she's not going to know what to say. Make her think about it. Anyway, you got the point. Immediately after, I love that. Immediately after, there'll be a great tribulation, which happens to be the great tribulation. When you go to Olive Garden, I go in there, humorously say, this is not the great tribulation. That has a great point to it from my angle, because it's not. It gets worse than this. I'm sorry. It gets worse. All right, false Christ. Look at the fake here. 24. False messiahs, fake prophets will arise and will show great miracles. Well, everybody falls for a miracle, don't they?
They fall for tongues.
They fall for tongues. Nobody knows what they've ever said.
Imagine miracles.
Imagine miracles.
Good point.
Terry's point was really good before when you said it took an apostle, Paul, to swoop down on those Corinthians, the church he'd founded himself. He says, you're nodding. Somebody comes bringing another Jesus, another gospel, another spirit. You're putting up with it. It took Paul stepping and saying, well, don't go there. Isn't that interesting? So don't assume that church members who are not thinking much are on the ball here. They're going to fall for it. Okay, so behold, I've told you in advance in verse 25. I love that. I've told you all this ahead of time. So if they say to you, behold, he's in the wilderness, don't go out. So there's another deception. I mean, how much are you going to put up with? Miracles? Someone saying he's out here in the wilderness, don't go there. That's a lie, falsehood. Don't go out in the wilderness. And he's in the inner chambers, invisibly. Don't believe them. Well, it's only 10 million Jehovah's Witnesses at your door. Are you working with them? They'll mark you after a while. They won't come. We try to help them. And as they go away in their car, I said, just please remember this verse. It does say, to which of the angels did God ever say, you're my son? Never. Got that? Well, then Jesus couldn't be Michael, could he?
You're my son.
They don't even know that their founder didn't believe that. It's even mindless groupthink. They don't even know that. But they're at your door pleading with you to get saved. Barbara thinks they're here thinking they may live in this house in the millennium. That's where they want to come snooping. They like to look at it. Probably, yeah. But you can work, you can drop a seed. You can drop a seed. You know, I do it. They won't come to us anymore. They've given up on me. It's a hopeless task. Okay. So I've told you in advance, we got it there. Wherever the corpse is, the buzzards will gather. The vultures in England,
The buzzards will.
buzzards are noble eagles. Only in America they're vultures. I have to say that. It's a noble eagle. But in America, unfortunately, it's a vulture. Whatever that reference is, probably eating the flesh of the wicked people, you know, the vultures are tidying up. Whatever that means exactly. Doesn't matter. So the vultures will gather immediately after. So you underline that in 15 colors, I told the students, 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, sun will be darkened, cosmic signs, obviously. Did we get this right in Armstrong days? I've forgotten. Partially, maybe. Yeah, maybe we did.
I think so.
I think we didn't say it was 70 AD.
No.
But we set a date, though.
Oh, yeah,
1975?
1975.
I was terrified when that came out. I was going back to the university. I remember that. Yeah, I was really disturbed by that.
I wasn't in the least.
Were you in on that?
No, I didn't care. Let him preach what he wants. I didn't believe it.
Even at that point?
Wow.
Bad attitude.
Yes.
Come on.
You don't know the half of it.
We'll get that at lunch
He did
later.
have bad attitude.
I want to hear the rest of the story.
Wow.
When we gathered in Pasadena, I was being kicked under the table and everything because I
Okay,
wanted
I'm
out.
back.
I was challenging everybody then.
Bad attitude.
Yep.
So nothing's changed.
Nothing.
Well said, Carmen.
Carlos, yes, I
You haven't
challenge.
learned the
I
lesson.
challenge everything in every
That's wonderful.
area.
Keep doing it, don't stop. In verse 31, then he will send forth his angel. Isn't that beautiful? Angels gathering immediately after the Great Tribulation. So you put the synonyms together. The second coming is the end of the age, is the day of the Lord, in other passages, is the gathering, and is the harvest. Isn't that easy? So if you're the devil, what you do is you split all those terms up.
Complicate things.
You make it complicated. So the words have ceased to have the same meaning. That's what I preached to them this last week. I said, words have meaning. In my sermon, words have meaning. Humpty Dumpty is the one who said, words mean exactly what I choose them to mean. That's Humpty Dumpty. That's what they do in church.
Let us never forget that Satan is the most intelligent, brilliant
Absolutely.
being in the world
Absolutely.
besides God.
And Jesus, yes.
Jesus has
Yes.
gotten that information since
That's right.
for 2,000
That's
years.
right.
But Satan's had it since he was created. Brilliant.
Absolutely. And he's watching the human race and
Brilliant.
seeing how stupid we are. Hence Tucker Carlson.
Yep.
We are the sworn enemies of groupthink. I want to go on that program.
Oh.
How do I get on
Oh,
that?
yeah.
I want to talk to him.
Yeah.
Tucker
He's
Carlson,
good.
I want
Yeah.
I don't know if I
He's
can do
good.
it.
Yeah.
But I love your slogan. It's right.
Yeah.
It's sworn
Pomposity.
pomposity,
groupthink.
groupthink.
And, he had 4 things.
Lying.
Lying,
Pomposity,
pomposity,
groupthink,
groupthink. Sworn enemy.
sworn enemy.
I want to say we are the equivalent in the world of Bible.
Yeah.
Now let me have my say.
Who had this?
Tucker Carlson on Fox.
He said those 4 things?
That's
He
his,
says it
his slogan.
When
Every
he
night.
signs off every night.
Oh, all right.
You haven't been watching
Gives
the
it
Fox
over to
News,
Andy.
have you?
Well, we have, but I haven't watched it. I fall asleep. I haven't watched it. I haven't heard that.
That's his slogan. We all need slogans, right?
That's a good one.
Sorry,
It's one
before
thing.
we wrap up.
Yes.
because I think you
It's
have
12
to
o'clock,
go
my
as
goodness.
well.
Yes, I have to go.
Can I just, for the camera and the recording, so we talked about the Great Commission
Yes.
and the revised English version. I just want to make this because I forgot.
For the camera, please.
It corrupts this version
Mm.
by Spirit and Truth Fellowship International. This is what it says. It's online. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations in my name, teaching them to obey all that I commanded you.
Left out
Does that
baptizing.
sound? Well, it lives out. It lives out baptizing them in the name of the.
Yes.
But this is an organization, just for the camera and the
Yes.
recording, that is against water baptism and many other things. Restoration Fellowship disagrees with that.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Yes. And they do teach speaking in tongues. You can go and watch Shane Hyatt. He's jokey and having fun. And problem is that people don't know how to speak in tongues because they haven't been taught. Then he says, you just relax, take a deep breath, and go, I said, that's awfully bad. Now I'm going to try to get to him. I've got to try to get to him.
We in
That is
2,000 years
Yes.
of the faith,
Yes.
someone can correct me,
Yeah.
but this has never been done in a translation or a paraphrase. as far
No.
as I know.
No.
Leaving
no.
out baptism.
Leaving out the whole thing,
Yeah.
baptizing them in the name
Yeah,
of the
right.
Father.
Yeah.
It's
To take out the word baptize. We only discovered that yesterday. That's why you're coming to us at a time when this is hugely important in the Church of God, this issue. Okay, so we don't have any more time. We're going to see you tomorrow night, I know, and hear the rest of your story.
Tonight.
Is it tonight? It's Sunday today. It is. It's tonight. It is tonight, indeed. So we're there. We've got it clearly. It's all about a future temple, apparently, an abomination in a temple immediately after. Final text for the day would be Hebrews 5:9, which says that salvation is given to those who, next word, I still have a job, obey.
Obey. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? You won't hear anybody preach it.
Yep.
Nobody will use that verse. That's easy. Okay, thank you so much. We'll leave it at that.